If San Francisco could talk, what would it say? That's the question at the heart of a new illustrated guide by artist Wendy MacNaughton. It's called Meanwhile in San Francisco, the city in its own words. MacNaughton has been sketching, observing, and informally interviewing Bay Area residents for years. She's also illustrated books such as the popular Lost Cat, a true story of love, desperation, and GPS technology. Scott Schaefer spoke with Wendy MacNaughton earlier.
Wendy MacNaughton, welcome.
Thank you.
I think of this as kind of an illustrated love letter to San Francisco, your book, and you describe yourself as a graphic journalist. What do you mean by that, and how does it relate to this book?
I use pictures that I draw and words of the people who I talk to tell true stories about their lives.
And so you're listening to people and talking with people and sort of taking composites of the things that you heard on the streets and throughout the city?
Exactly. I spend anywhere from a day to a whole month with a group of people, writing down everything they say, getting to know them, and all the while drawing everything that I see, them, what they're doing, little snippets of things that we might otherwise overlook.
One of the things you say in the book is that San Francisco is a city of dividing lines, culture, language, socioeconomic status, and so on. Doing this book, how did you bridge those divides?
Well, the places that I looked at were communities that I didn't necessarily know very much about. So it was really interesting for me to go and talk to different people and find that in San Francisco that there's so many different cities going on at once. I had an idea of my San Francisco, but this pointed out many others that are going on at the same time.
Yeah. Despite the dividing lines, there are places in San Francisco where there's kind of crossroads, where everyone comes together for one reason or another, and you spend time in some of those. Civic Center is one of those, and the main library in particular. Tell us about that and why you chose the main library and the time you spent there and what you saw.
I spent about a month in the main library, and so many different people come through there. It is really a center of the city in so many different ways. And when I went in there, I thought it was going to be one story, but it turned out to be a very different one that revealed itself to me. It's the only place in the country at the time that had a full-time social worker, and they do so much good for the city. It's really incredible. And
there's actually an illustration of the social worker in the book, Leah, I think her name is. Yeah. What was she like? What does she do there? How does she spend her day?
She works so hard. She has developed a homeless outreach program, and so she actually reaches out to people who come and use the library for a place to be, a place to rest, to develop a job resume, and she'll help them get resources that support them, and she'll actually sometimes help those people get jobs within the library doing outreach themselves.
Yeah. As I said, it's a crossroads, the library, and you've got students, it's kind of an after-school program for kids in some ways, unemployed folks looking for work, the homeless, of course. What are the kinds of things you overheard as you were there?
You hear it all. I mean, first of all, it's a quiet place. You're not going to hear all that much. So I did talk to a lot of different people, and I heard people just talk about how much it meant to them, how all the different ways that they use it.
Yeah. And there was also Charles, who you profiled, I think, a formerly homeless person who also works there with the health department, I think. I mean, it's really a social service hub as much as a lending place, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, not far from there is 5th Street in Mission and 6th Street in Mission, which is, as you say, a block away, but a universe away. Describe those two blocks and how they're different.
5th Street, well, they're both pretty transient places. A lot of people moving through at all times, but in a very different way. 5th Street, you have people going to work, to and from lunch, stuff like that, a parking garage right there. 6th Street has one of the largest concentration of SROs, or single resident occupancy hotels in the city.
A lot of social services.
A lot of social services going on there. And so you have two very different worlds just a block apart.
And one of the things you did is you illustrated the different things for sale on the two streets.
Yeah,
quite different.
Very different. Very big difference between a really wonderful high-end coffee shop and a really, great corner store, but they don't really sell anything to eat there.
Yeah. San Francisco is itself at a crossroads in a way. We have this civic conversation. Sometimes it's more of an argument going on about the cost of living here and the techies coming in. And I would think that part of San Francisco might be a place you could pick up on some of those tensions, some of those differences between people. Was that the case?
Yeah, it's amazing. If you just stand on the street corner, which is one of the things that I did, and just listen to what people say as you walk by, the difference between the conversations on 5th Street, which might be about getting to work and being very busy, are very different than what we hear on 6th Street, which might be about, hey, how you doing? You're kind of hanging out on my front stoop. What's going on? You know?
Yeah. You also profiled Muni, spent some time on a Muni bus, another one of those places where people congregate and interact, or don't interact, but at least cross paths.
Yeah.
And you profiled a driver, and sort of one of the things you pointed out was the rituals that they have at the beginning of the day.
Yeah, up at the crack of dawn and going through, getting the bus ready, cleaning everything off, making sure it's in tip-top condition. And then he gets on the bus, and he's one of the people who has this incredible overview of San Francisco. He cuts through so many different places.
First class seat?
First class seat, he sees it all. And so if you get on Muni and you ride around on the different routes, you really do get to see a lot.
You take note of the number of times people say hello and thank you.
Not very many.
Not very many. It gives you an appreciation for how tough that job is.
Yeah, and how very patient those people are.
Yeah. Well, you also paid a visit to Golden Gate Park, and what everyone thinks of as the buffalo, but as it turns out, they're bison.
They're bison.
Yeah.
Yes.
What did you find out there?
Well,
Buttercup the bison.
Buttercup, they have amazing names. Everyone has a name and a different personality, and they've been there for a long time, and supposedly they're quite happy.
Yeah. I guess you could do this kind of thing anywhere. You could do it in Los Angeles, you could do it in Sacramento, San Diego, Chicago, New York. Do you feel that you've captured, or would you capture something different in those places, or are urban centers, are they so similar in a way?
I think that there's similarities in their diversity. I think that there's 100,000 different stories to tell in every city, and I would love to capture more.
All right. The book is called Meanwhile in San Francisco, The City in Its Own Words. Wendy MacNaughton, thanks for coming in.
Thanks so much for having me.
And to watch Wendy MacNaughton at work in her studio, please visit our website at kqed.org/arts.